The broadcast is now starting. All attendees are in listen-only mode.
Good morning, and thanks for joining our webinar this morning to look at how the authentication landscape and identity assurance is changing in response to a revised and changing threat landscape. My name is Shona Bradshaw. I'm Marketing and Communications Manager for Bytes Security Partnerships. I'm delighted to be joined today by one of the senior engineers at RSA Security, Matthias Schulmeier. He'll be taking through the crux of today's presentation. Just a few things to start off with. So just a little bit of an agenda for today, what you can expect, a little bit of housekeeping, and then a very short introduction to Bytes and why we're here today. I'll introduce Matthias and RSA, and then I'll hand over to Matthias, who will talk us through around how people are going to be logging in the future, how authentication has changed in order to match today's threat landscape and the expectations, the different expectations people have from accessing their networks and their resources. He'll do a demonstration of RSA Secure ID access, and then we'll have an open Q&A at the end. So a little bit of housekeeping for today. Attendee lines will be on mute throughout the presentation. However, we will be doing an interactive Q&A at the end, so please do, as they occur to you throughout the presentation, post those questions via the chat or questions box, and I'll pick them up and pose them all to Matthias at the end. Just to set sort of rules of engagement for today, we will be keeping the conversation today around strategy and solutions. We won't discuss commercials and financials of any of the products and solutions that Matthias shows today, though of course we are delighted to have those conversations with you about your accounts and your account managers at the end. We will have a recording available post-session, and we'll share that with all attendees, so you can share that insight with your teams as well as the slide deck from today. And we will have a feedback survey at the end. It's a very short survey just asking you how you've enjoyed today's webinar, just to make sure that these sessions continue to hit the mark in terms of the quality that we're providing. And so a little bit about Bytes. Who are we? So we are an independent security reseller within the Bytes Altron group, our electronics group. Security has been our sole focus for over 16 years now. So what we aim to do is to provide that responsiveness and insight and specialism that you get from a small independent reseller, and combine that with some of the resources that you might expect as part of a larger group. We're very proud, and one of our core offerings is that the in-house consultancy and expertise we provide. We have a fully accredited third-line support team around RSA and other technologies, and we offer a full suite of consultancy and services around RSA and other technologies. This means that we have top-tier vendor relationships with the likes of RSA. We are a premier an affiliate elite partner of RSA with the highest status provided. That means that we can not only provide technical insight around this technology, but also commercial value, which is what we aim to do. So where do we work across? So if it says security, we essentially do it. So we work across network security. We partner with Checkpoint specifically around their next generation firewall offering, and we look across content security, web and email security, access and authentication, which is what we're talking to you about today, mobile security and cloud security. So we a vast array of technologies that we involve and speak to our customers around within the security landscape. Within each of those, what we aim to bring to the party is that technology expertise and that real insight for you. So we have a fully accredited consultancy and technical support team who are involved end-to-end across the technology suite. So they scope, they do in-house planning, security strategy development, security education, planning, and actual technical delivery on site as well. So that's enough about us, as most of you do know us already. Why are we talking to people just now about authentication, and why has authentication changed? So there are a few key points to mention. Employee expectations. So people expect, due to the fact that there are more mobile users, more roaming users, they expect increased flexibility in access methods. They expect it to be as simple for them to log into their network resources on any device from anywhere. They expect simplicity, and where simplicity isn't given to them, they see that as a real barrier to adopting increased security in authentication. At the same time, Legislation and increasing legislation, particularly the advent of GDPR next year, is placing increased pressure on businesses to tighten up the rules of how their employees, third parties, and indeed customers access their resources to prevent data breaches. The password has long been maligned as the weakest link in the security chain. So businesses are seeking flexible, inventive ways of ensuring that only the right people access their resources at the right time for the right purpose. And authentication, the landscape and the technology has changed in response to that. So that's why we are talking to you today around those changes. With that in mind, all that it remains for me to do is to introduce Matthias. He's one of our senior technical consultants and supporting the secure ID access platform across Europe. We've been working with RSA for over 10 years as an affiliate elite partner. We're very ingrained within their technologies. Our support team and technical services department offer a variety of different skills and around different services around RSA. RSA, one of the reasons we've been working with them for so many years is year on year, they are Gartner market leader in access, authentication and identity. They're really at the forefront and pioneering how authentication is currently changing and how it will continue to change to meet emerging threats and meet the increased expectations of your end users. So with that in mind, I want to hand over to Matthias. Matthias will take you through today's presentation on how authentication has changed and why, and then show you how your RSA suite has changed in response to that. Over to Matthias.
Well, thank you very much, Shona, and good morning, everyone. So, I hope everyone can see my screen. That should be okay right by now. So let's start off with the biggest question we have, addressing the number one question, identity management. What's the biggest issue? It's really making sure the user is who he claims to be. So let me walk you through the agenda I've created for today. First of all, let's look at the changing threat landscape, what has changed, how, as Shona already mentioned, the portfolio or RSA security has evolved, what it looks like, what kind of use cases you can use it for, and at the end we'll have some Q&A, so for all your questions, and hopefully I will be able to answer your questions immediately. Otherwise I will take them away and we'll get back to you. So looking at the changing threat landscape, what has changed? The traditional controls are no longer effective. If you think of traditional perimeter protection where everything sensitive, everything relevant to your business has been internally on-premise and you had your perimeter controls, these perimeter controls vanished. You have data in the cloud, SaaS applications as well, third-party access, so it's not the traditional just employees get access to data. You have third parties, particularly if you look at the car industry as an example. They used to have third-party contractors come into the company. They get third-party contractors access within the company. Now they work from home, they work from the contractor side, and they get access to sensitive, sometimes even intellectual property data. Also, long live the password is dead kind of thing. The password, over the time we've created new policies making it more complex for end users to create a password. You need characters, digits, numbers, symbols in there, and when you have to change your password after 30 or 60 or 90 days, you're not allowed to use the same password again, or same password in the last couple of months, or last 5 times, something like that. So it's getting more and more complex, which actually leads to recycling of passwords. Mentioning the scenario where you're not allowed to use the last 3 passwords, this will mean even though you're not allowed to use your last 3 passwords, the users become sort of lazy and just add a number to the old password, add a new number, increase the number. So instead of its password 1, 2, 3, it will be 1, 2, 3, 4. So passwords are not really complex and can easily be breached. And all of this leads to compliance failures. So there's a lot of compliance requirements around either internal compliance regulations or external regulations, PCI compliance, EU, GDPR, certain standards, or just because you are a supplier to a big company, they have compliance regulations for you, so otherwise you will not be a valid supplier for them. And all of this creates a lack of control and lack of visibility. These different silos, these different identity islands are hard to manage. You have users internally, you have users in the third-party contractors, for example, and you have users, identities, data in the cloud. Which creates a lack of control and visibility. And this actually also means organizations these days are struggling to protect their user identities. And we can look at all those zero-day attacks, advanced targeted attacks, but when it comes to what's the most efficient way to attack a company or the most consequential attack vector, it's actually the user identity. Think of the bad guys as an organization, as a business as well. You can spend weeks and months finding a zero-day vulnerability and then actually exploiting it, or just a couple of minutes to compromise an identity and get access to the data with a legitimate login account. So the days, and these are some stats we've taken from the Verizon data breach investigation report, it only takes minutes to compromise an identity. So in 82% of all breaches, we found out, Verizon found out that these identities got compromised within minutes, which leads to exfiltration, to stealing of data within a couple of days, not weeks, not months, a couple of days. Anyone remembers the iPhone, Apple versus the FBI San Bernardino case? Well, in the end, a company from Israel helped the FBI to crack or to hack that iPhone, and that company was called Cellebrite, or is called Cellebrite. So Cellebrite has been in the news recently again because they've got hacked, and the hackers have exfiltrated 900 gigabytes of data, of Cellebrite data. That's not just an Excel file, that's not just an email, that's sensitive company information, 900 gigs, just within days. And in 63 of all attacks, these of web-based attacks, these adversaries, the attackers, literally just walked in with stolen user credentials, stolen passwords. So what do we have to do? We have to reimagine your identity strategy. So this really means ensuring that the user is who he claims to be, that it is really Matthias logging in at this moment. But at the same time, we need to provide the appropriate system access and appropriate data and application access with a feasible authentication and usability for the end user, which in the end drives business agility and the digital transformation. In the end, you as a customer, our customers, they are not here to be concerned too much about security. They want to do what they do best, their business. Making cars, selling cars, improving the world, whatever it is. That's what they are focused on. So our mission as RSA is to provide a convenient and at the same time secure access in a world with no boundaries. And traditionally, convenience and security has always been considered as a trade-off, but this has changed. And how has this changed? With the evolution of Secure ID. So if you look at Secure ID, or what everyone knows RSA Secure ID for, this is the traditional scenario. We talk about, oh yeah, remote access, traditional VPN. We have our central authentication manager server, probably our users stored in an LDAP or Microsoft AD. And when I log into the VPN, it means that you have to use my token code as well. But over the last 30 years, RSA has been integrating with a lot of different vendors, not just the traditional VPN. We talk about SSL VPN, web servers, on-prem components, VDI infrastructures, desktop, network devices, Wi-Fi, you name it. We had integration with those access points, those technologies, and could add additional security with traditional hardware or software tokens to protect those applications. And also, when we look at the cloud, there's always been possibilities to integrate with federation or single sign-on technologies to also protect cloud applications. Either it was RSA's own technology or a third party like Microsoft Ping and so on. This has always been something we integrated out of the box. And by the way, speaking of cloud applications and the adoption of the cloud application, a big driver behind this is mobile. The mobile workforce, mobile devices, getting access to IT information, to corporate information, no matter where you are and no matter what device you're using. Big driver behind this mobile workforce, mobile devices. And speaking of software tokens or authenticators, OTPs on mobile devices, RSA has actually been the first company to introduce them back in 2002, which is now 15 years ago. So what we've now added for our existing customers and for our new customers, probably completely new to you, we've added a component which we call the IDR, the identity router. So this is our component to protect the cloud applications and the on-prem cloud applications or private cloud applications through a single solution security access. So this means we can now enforce strong authentication or even what we call identity assurance throughout on-premise and in the cloud applications according to your business requirements. And this component for some customers is completely free, but let's have a look at the licensing at the later stage. So what does it mean, or how is RSA doing this differently? So we follow the hybrid approach or a hybrid approach. So we have the on-premise components like your existing authentication manager server, the token management server, and your existing user repository like a Microsoft AD. So we add the identity router, which is our gateway to the cloud, but also the other way around. If you want to publish internal applications externally, you can leverage the identity router and give seamless access to the end users, no matter if they're on-prem or in the cloud, to cloud applications or on-prem applications. And all through a single pane of glass, through a single application portal. However, at the same time, we have a component in the cloud, the RSA hosted services or cloud services for security access. This is where we create policies, where we manage the solution, and being a cloud provider technology, it's little to no operational admin tasks for your organization. So streamlining the efforts, optimizing the return on invest of the solution. And also this is how we integrate into cloud applications. The really key takeaway here is the sensitive information about your users, about your organizations remain on-premise. We don't sync any sensitive user information to the cloud. Every time a user tries to get access to a cloud or on-prem applications, this is actually being single sign-on speak evaluated on the identity router. So the identity router is our policy decision and enforcement point. And this also means the identity router looks up the user information on-prem. So these sensitive information about your user credentials never leave your company, never leave your control. So how are we doing this? We evolved the security solution to get away from the traditional or binary decision from authentication to be a context and risk-driven identity assurance technology. So no matter from what device, from what access point the end user accesses the technology, we will look at the context and assess the risk. So this means we look at the role of the user. Is he, for example, a manager? Is he part of a certain user group which allows access to a specific application? We look at the session. Has the user already authenticated using a higher level of authentication method? We look at the device. Do we know the device? We look at the location, geolocation, and also network location. So for example, if it's your office network. And speaking of the app in particular, we attach a certain risk or sensitivity to the application the user is trying to access. So all those attributes, all those factors are taken into consideration, and if the context is okay, if it complies with your business policies, the user will be granted access to the application he's requesting. Seamless access to, for example, here a cloud application like Salesforce. However, if the context changes or the risk is too high, the user is being challenged with a step-up authentication option. And this means you can leverage, as an existing security customer, the investment you already made. So you can leverage your existing hardware and software tokens for authentication, or you can add new methods, a broader range of authentications to the technology. So you can use a mobile application built in OTP. You can use push notifications where a user just gets a push notification, needs to approve this. You can leverage biometric capabilities provided through the mobile phone. So for example, what probably every one of us uses every day for unlocking their phones, their iPhones, the fingerprint. We can leverage an iPrint ID or iVerification, an OEM technology we're using. And you can also use the push notification or actionable notification in smartwatches like an Apple Watch. And additionally, we support FIDO U2F compliant tokens. So in particular, if you look at the contractors' third-party access, where it's sometimes very difficult to provision, to distribute hardware or software tokens to their devices, FIDO U2F, by the way, FIDO, Fast Identity Online Alliance, RSA is a steering member, and we support the FIDO U2F compliant tokens, which means the end user, a contractor for example, brings the token to the service and registers the token with the service. So this simplifies the provisioning, the deployment of tokens around the world, for example, or with contractors extremely. So how does this look like in action? Let me walk you through a demo. So first of all, this is the application I mentioned earlier, application portal. As an end user, if I'm in the internal network, I could just seamlessly authenticate into the portal using integrated Windows authentication. So if this would be a domain joined machine, I could just seamlessly authenticate into the portal. In this demo environment, however, this is not a domain joined scenario, so I'll have to manually log in. But once I'm in the portal, I will, as an end user, see all the applications I'm allowed to use according to my role, according to the context. So you can see here we have Concur, that's our travel and expense management. I've got an intranet website, I've got a security self-service console, I've got Salesforce in the cloud, Slack, communication platform, and a SAML demo application, just internal manually created application. And you also see in brackets low, medium, and high. So these are the sensitivities or the assurance levels a user needs to provide to get access to these applications. So if I now want to get access to Concur, which is a low-level authentication, the policy is evaluated the moment I'm trying to access the application. And you can see here now the user is being prompted to provide additional authentication method, and he will see, oh yeah, I get a notification on my mobile phone. So how does this look like? If you have an iOS phone, you get a notification on your lock screen. It's an actionable notification. So this means just by tapping approve, you can approve this application request from your lock screen. And you see, successful authentication, and just within a couple of seconds, I'm successfully federated into my actual application. Easy, convenient, really straightforward. And you use an authentication method which the user is already carrying around anyway, a mobile phone. And since it's only a low sensitivity application, or in other words, the user only needs to provide a low assurance method, it's not too cumbersome to challenge the user with different methods. It's a really straightforward, okay, you're in possession of, for example, company phone, please approve this request. However, if I now go on through my day, through my work day, and I also have to check something in Salesforce, this time Salesforce is a medium assurance level authentication, and I need to provide a higher level of assurance level. So biometrics, for example. So this means I get a push notification on my mobile phone to go to the security access application, and you have to look quickly. I will point my front-facing camera to my eyes, and you can see how quick it went just within a blink, a very short blink. It verified the eye vessel pattern within my eyes, and now I'm already in Salesforce. Extremely quick, biometric factor, it's match on device, so we don't process any biometric data over the communication channels, just on the device, extremely convenient, straightforward for the end user. Speaking of convenience, if I now go on and I want to go to a separate application which has the same level of assurance, like in this scenario here, Slack. What happens, even though the policy is evaluated again, what is required by the end user, I've already provided medium level authentication method within this session, which means I will get straight access to this application without having to provide an additional method or authentication method again. And moving on throughout the day, I now want access to a high sensitive application, maybe intellectual property or research and development data. In that scenario, you can even combine several authentication methods for the end user really to provide a high assurance level that it's really the user who claims to be. So in this scenario, I need to provide a FIDO token. So I need to plug in my FIDO token into my USB port, tap it to activate it, and then additionally, again, a biometric factor, fingerprint. And like the eye verification, this is match on device. So all we do on an iOS device is calling the Touch ID functionality, which means I do something which I do 10 times a day anyway. Just tap my fingerprint reader on my mobile phone and I'm already federated into the application. Extremely straightforward, extremely convenient for the end users according to your business policies, to your business requirements. High level sensitivity, challenge the user with something stronger. Low level sensitivity, low assurance level required, just provide that you are in possession of a registered authenticator, a registered device like your mobile phone. Extremely straightforward. And speaking of how is this managed, or how can your company policies be created, this is the admin console, a web-based console, very sleek, very easy to manage. And you can see here we have user management, the access management, where you manage the policies and application policies. So if I now, for example, go into policies, you can see here trusted networks, that's where I can manage my IP address ranges or trusted locations. But this is where I can manage the geolocations of customers or of my offices, for example. So you can see here we have a office, our RSA EMEA headquarters in the UK is in Bracknell. So I can just draw a radius, a circle around the building, and if I'm within that circle, this is to be deemed a trusted location. And I then take that information and put it, use it in a policy. But before we go into the policies, one more detail, the assurance levels, as I mentioned earlier. You as a company can decide what assurance levels or what kind of authenticator is appropriate for the different assurance levels. So going back to the scenario of Concur, a low sensitivity application, a user can provide in this environment either a push notification, which we call approve, a mobile OTP, a built-in OTP, or a hardware token. For medium level, biometrics or FIDO token, and for high level, a combination. Personally, I would probably rather see it like this, saying we've got FIDO and a combination here, but we would, for example, have security over here, or even saying we just have FIDO only down here at the low assurance level. This could be a combination, absolutely according to your company policies and your business requirements. And then we take these attributes, we take these values, this information, and put it into a policy. So if I now look at my Salesforce application policy here, you specify name to confuse your colleagues. Then you select the identity source you want to provide or consume attributes from. So this in our demo environment is an OpenDJ. We are compatible with any elder version 3 compatible source. And then you create your policy. And the great thing about the policy is the rule set, which are top down, so similar to firewall rules, or if you work with TMG or IVA before, you can just, for example, just move them around as if you go along with creating rules. Once in the rule set, you can create complex rules according to your policies. But let's start with something rather easy. So in this one here, I have a policy created which matches a title. So if the user has Super Salesforce Manager in his title, and that seems to be a very sensitive, very privileged account. So this user has probably access to a lot of detail, a lot of information. So we always require him, no matter where he is or where he gets access from, to provide a medium level of authentication. So biometrics or FIDO token. However, for everyone else, we will have a more conditional policy. So first of all, a user needs to be part of the Salesforce group. If he's not part of the Salesforce group, he will not get access to this application. If he's part of the Salesforce group, you can create conditional policies. Now let me walk you through this. So you can see here I've created 3 different conditions for the 3 different assurance level. So number 1 is I either know the location, so he's in my circle, or he comes from a trusted network. Now this means Office IP range or VPN IP range, or our risk-based analytics engine in the background deems the identity confidence to be high, which means the risk score of the end user is low. So we look at the user behavior, we look at the device, we look at where he's coming from, and trying to make it as easy for administrators to keep the complexity away as much as possible. If it's high confidence that this is really the user, he will only have to provide a low assurance level method. However, if it's low confidence or if he's not from the trusted network or not in a trusted location, then we have a more granular policy created. So for example, if you don't know the location, we've never seen this location before, but we know the device, he needs to provide a medium level authenticator. So in this case, biometrics or FIDO token. If none of the above applies, so we don't know the location, we don't know the device, and typically we only hand out iOS tablets, iPads, then he needs to provide a high-level authentication method. So, for example, a combination of a FIDO token and a fingerprint. If nothing matches, denied access. There's always a fail-safe. If the user is not able to provide the appropriate authentication method, he will not get access. And these conditions, these attributes are not the only attributes we can use in a policy. So these are just a few we put in the demo here. When it comes to the capabilities, we have more. We can also do this based on a country. So what is the user, for example, coming from Ireland, or saying it's not coming from Ireland. We can look at where if he authenticated before. So for example, if we use integrated Windows authentication, if it's a domain joined device and he authenticated within the domain, we can just use that information and federate him straight into the application, trusted location, specific user agents, countries, or just use the risk-based approach. If it's low, saying, okay, it is very unlikely this is really Matthias, then authenticate him with a high-level authentication method. And this then, all of these policies can be created for individual applications or for several applications. They are then tied in to the actual application. So what we provide out of the box with the solution is an application catalog. So these are the most commonly requested applications we see from A to Z. So Amazon Web Services to, for example, Zscaler, A to Z. So no matter if it's an on-prem or cloud-based application, as long as the application supports some form of web single sign-on, we can integrate out of the box. The most commonly requested applications we have in the application catalog here, so you can see Skype, for example. ServiceNow is something we see quite a lot. Salesforce, of course, as you've seen before. SAP, RSA's own products, for example, remote access, SSL VPN gateways from Juniper, now Pulse Secure. We see Oracle, single sign-on vendors. So, for example, if you think, oh yeah, I already have single sign-on in place, no problem, you can integrate with single sign-on technology as well. We've got Microsoft in here and a lot of other vendors. Going back to the example of Pulse SSL VPN, if you have an application delivery controller in-house like F5, or if you use Citrix NetScaler, all of these solutions are out of the box supported. If you use something which is probably not that common or not that popular, again, it's not an issue for us at all. because we support several web single sign-on technologies. For example, SAML. SAML is our favorite method to implement with. If SAML is not available, you can also do HTTP fetch, which means we will do a discovery of the web application of the login form and will match the login details you need to provide, or you can insert headers into the HTTP header. So these are different options, and if your application is not in this list, no problem at all. The wizard, the connector template wizard, will just walk you through the different informations, the different requirements we have, and you will have to provide to integrate with the application. So for example, in this case of a SAML application, you either work with metadata, or you have to manually provide the SAML information, just a couple of steps, and you're up and running to integrate a new application in this solution. Once you've added all the details, you just select the policy you want to, how you want to protect this application. For example, the location-based policy I've created earlier. You publish the changes, and you're ready to go. You're ready to take back control of those applications in the cloud, of these shadow IT applications, by maintaining a centralized identity assurance technology with a centralized policy, and you will be able to enforce your policies across the different integration protocols and platforms. Okay, so much about the demo. Let's go back to the slide deck. So what does it mean for you as a customer? So RSA Security is made up of the still and continued investment in the class-leading OTP technology, what we all know about RSA, the hardware token, the hardware OTP, but also software tokens. But we've extended the capabilities to be a multi-factor authentication solution. If the binary decision of just, yeah, the user has a token or has no token is not enough for you, different use cases, different employees, contractors, third parties, the appropriate authentication method for the appropriate access. Biometrics, FIDO, push notifications, all supported, but we've taken it one step further. We do not just look at the authenticator itself, we'll look at the context and the risk around the access. This is what we call identity assurance. We look at the location of the user, geolocation, network location, device type, user role, app sensitivity, different attributes you can select, and then decide what the user needs to provide to be an appropriate authentication method. No matter if the application is on-prem or in the cloud, we have a huge integration network built up over the last 25, 30 years, the RSA Ready program, where we out of the box integrate with the major applications, on-prem applications, more than 500 different applications, but also out of the box integrate with leading cloud applications. And we do this through a technology platform, single sign-on. So we don't compete in this space as a single sign-on vendor. However, we understand single sign-on as a technology platform for integration. So if it's SAML based, no problem, WS Federation, Microsoft mostly, or OAuth, OpenID, supported technologies. If those technologies or if those protocols are not available, we can also function as a reverse proxy, do the header insertion, or do the password vaulting HTTP fetch technology. So what does this mean from a use case perspective? So what you probably already know from RSA, the base and enterprise license. So base is a traditional license scenario if you want to protect the perimeter, if you're pretty much on-prem focused. Then we have enterprise. Enterprise means we protect on-prem components but also cloud components, or want to have enterprise scalability. And premium means we do the perimeter, the cloud part, and also want the risk-based analytics in the technology. So that's the first question we have, or the first choice you have to make, which package do you want, base, enterprise, or premium. And the second part is about how do you want to protect your users? What kind of authenticator do you want to provide? So this means in base, we provide authentication manager, and you get out-of-the-box integrations with security protocol agents or radios. In enterprise you can protect on-prem and in the cloud applications, which means you get an additional component, the single sign-on agent or the IDR, our gateway to the cloud, which offers the web single sign-on based integrations. And last but not least, the premium option, which will give you the risk analytics, the risk engine, and the full context policy creation capabilities. And then second, you choose the authenticator types for the end users if you want traditional hardware or software tokens. If you already have stock in place, you made an investment before, you can leverage that, but you can extend, beginning from the enterprise license, you can extend new authentication options, new use cases for your users depending on the requirements through the new advanced mobility multi-factor technology. So this could mean a OTP provided through a mobile application, push notifications, the biometrics, but it also includes the FIDO U2F compliant tokens usage. So let's have a look at this. What does it mean from a component point of view? The base edition includes the authentication manager server. So this is your token server, and it communicates with the agents. So for example, a traditional VPN, and looks up the identities in your user store, AD or an LDAP, generally speaking, and then the user can authenticate using a hardware or software token. The Enterprise Edition adds the component of the IDR, the identity router, so which gives you additional radius capabilities. I will get back to that later, which will also look up the user identity in the AD and gives you the single sign-on capabilities. The IDR is managed through the hosted services, through the cloud components we provide. So admin console for the IDR is in the cloud, but it will also extend the capabilities to use those new mobile provided authentication services. So push, biometrics, and FIDO. And last but not least, the premium edition will also give you the capability of using the risk analytics engine. So creating context-based and risk-based policies according to your requirements. From a use case point of view, what does this mean? So let's say you're an existing enterprise customer and you want to protect cloud-based applications. So what this means for you can just, and by the way, this is free of charge. If you're an existing enterprise customer, you can just deploy the IDR and can protect your SaaS applications, Dropbox, Salesforce, Office 365, with your existing security hardware or software tokens. If you additionally want to protect those applications with the new applications, push notifications, biometrics, you can also do that, but that would mean, okay, you have to purchase an additional authenticator for your end user. If you look at another use case, and again, this also applies to enterprise or the premium licensing model, you don't want to use the traditional authentication manager hardware tokens and integration. You want to use a cloud-based authentication service. What we can then do, either through SAML or a RESTful-based API, integrate with your single sign-on solution or your web solution, or generally speaking, your SAML supporting or API supporting application, and protect that application with the new mobile authenticator options, which means you have a minimal on-prem footprint. However, the only component we will then still deploy on the IDR, on-premise is the IDR, with the minimal deployment option of the enterprise connector, which will perform the identity lookup in the identity source. We want to make sure that your identities are kept secret as good as possible, meaning they never leave your environment. And use case 3, this is probably, could be enterprise or premium again. This is the full setup. You want to use the full offering. You have on-prem components, for example, traditional VPN or VDI, where you want to have hardware token usage or traditional integration, but you also have a different VPN gateway, for example, and you want to integrate with Radius and only use the new mobile authentication options. And additionally, you have cloud-based applications, and you want to use the new methods and the old methods with these cloud-based applications. So this would potentially mean you would have the full setup, meaning IDR deployed, authentication manager deployed, and the SaaS ops running for you as well. So where is this going? So these were just some examples of use cases, but if we look at the strategy and the future investments of RSA security access, we look at different areas. One of the very interesting things is continuous identity assurance. So meaning, how does a user move around the organization, for example, in terms of joiners, leavers, movers. So we can integrate with lifecycle management tools like our own RSA security governance and lifecycle, and adopt according to the requirements of the user. But it also means something very tangible, something very in motion, where we look at continuous authentication. For example, you authenticated with your laptop while you were in the office, and then you walk away because you take a call, you lock your PC, you walk away, you walk outside, go to Starbucks, grab a coffee, come back in. So the context has changed, which means you might have to re-authenticate using your mobile phone to get access to your Windows 10 PC. Speaking of Windows 10 PC, this could also mean we can integrate with Windows 10 and protect the Windows login through Windows Hello with the mobile phone, with the Windows companion device framework. But just by being in proximity of your Windows 10 laptop, we can unlock the Windows 10 PC. Again, according to your policies, according to your requirements. We will invest in more standards, as I mentioned before, OpenAuth and OpenID Direct Connect. We are currently offering, or we will make the API, the RESTful API, available this month, the RESTful API for authentication services. We will extend the scalability of the solution from business to business to, or business to employee to business and business to consumer. And we will extend the capability of the solution to integrate with more detection and visibility and analytics tools like our own ASOC portfolio, Advanced Security Operation Center portfolio, for information sharing. So if something fraudulent happens within your network, or you see there's a compromised client PC, you're making sure that this user has the right access and, for example, re-authenticate the user, or he has to provide an additional challenge method just because of something in the whole context has changed. So these external risk threats or risk intelligence will be added to the solution in the future as well, in the short-term future. But these are all strategic investment areas we have planned for 2017. So that was a lot to take in, and I'm cautious of time. We have a couple of more minutes left. So this is the time where I would like to open up the conversations for questions and answers. So Shauna, are there any questions already?
Yes, we do have a question, a couple of questions already, but I'd like to take the opportunity to ask anyone who's thought of some questions throughout the use cases or the demos to take time to pop them in the questions box now, and then I will ask them to Matthias over the coming minutes. So the first question I have is regarding Citrix Synapse. So is there integration with Citrix Synapse remote access available at the moment?
Yeah, Citrix Synapse, there's different ways of integrating Citrix Synapse. So we have a direct integration with Synapse and the traditional security agents, so we can protect with Synapse with traditional security hardware and software tokens. However, the Citrix setup has changed a lot in the recent years, and typically a Citrix deployment now is provisioned or is being provided, published through a NetScaler gateway. And going back to the NetScaler scenario, NetScaler actually offers several integration technologies, so we can have the traditional security integration radius based or SAML based. So yes, Synapse is a supported scenario. Depending on how your environment looks like, we might have a direct Synapse integration, but more likely I would assume that a NetScaler is also deployed in that environment, and I would favor the integration through the NetScaler because that will give you a central access point for your end users and a central enforcement point for the policies through the NetScaler through a more modern technology, SAML.
Okay, thank you. that customer said thank you as well. So second question is just a little bit around the risk-based. You mentioned that there was, one of the things you mentioned in passing was the risk-based authentication engine looking at users' risk. Can you give a little bit more detail around the background to that and what that provides? You know, what factors it judges risk based on?
Okay, yeah, so risk-based, this is the latest incarnation of the RSA machine learning risk technology, which has been in place for the last probably also 15 years, almost probably around 15 years, which you probably heard of adaptive authentication before. So adaptive authentication is a technology or product we had in place in, the majority is used in the online transaction financial sector. So basically whenever you make a payment online, in most cases you can be sure that this is protected by RSA's adaptive authentication technology. So the majority of the UK-based banks, for example, use that. So this means we look at different factors like do we know the device? Have we seen this device before? We look at the user behavior, the network location of the device. We look at the device fingerprinting, for example, operating system version, screen resolution, things like that. But the most important thing about it really is the user behavior. So how does this user travel, for example, velocity? Does he always log in from that IP, from that location? So, for example, Monday morning, 9 o'clock, he's in the office and logging in, or is he suddenly logging in from somewhere else? For example, he's on holiday, he's on Barbados, and he's suddenly logging in 12 or midnight from a different machine. So these are the factors we're looking at. User behavior also means if he recently changed the password, if he had consecutive failed login attempts, things like that. That always increases the risk of the users really being the user. So these are different factors. In total, we gather 65 different attributes about the device, about the context of this access, and the context also changes over time. So if the behavior was normal at the beginning, this does not necessarily mean that after 3 months, 6 months, a year or so, that behavior is still normal. So the machine or the machine learning engine, the technology is auto-tuning, self-learning, and it will adopt over time for the individual user behavior, but also for the whole population. Whole population can mean, for example, if the whole office changes its location, new IP ranges, the first couple of users might be challenged because it seems to be risky, whereas after the machine or the machine learning engine has learned after a couple of authentication attempts, now actually this seems to be normal behavior for the user population now, and will then stop challenging the users within the population.
Okay, thank you. So just going to ask if there's any more questions. I'm just conscious we're running up to the hour mark. If anyone has any more questions, please do take just a minute to pop them down on the questions box. I'll pose them to Matthias. Whilst you're doing so, I just want to thank Matthias very much for his time and his detailed presentation today. Also thank you all for taking time out of your busy days to attend. And then just reiterate that we will have a recording of today's session available. So please do, feel free to share that within your teams, within your wider business, and we'll send the slide deck out as well, so you can share that within your team as appropriate over the coming days. Thank you everyone for attending. I don't have any further questions at the moment, so I'll call a halt to it there. Thank you very much for attending, and thanks Matthias.
You're very welcome, and good day to everyone.